we've got this aggregate image of vampires that is limited and skewed because we have a very, we've had an odd set of, an incomplete set of observations about them, and so now we've got this vampire lump. It's like, okay, well, what if it worked like that? Now I can split the vampires into 3 distinct kinds of vampires that have each been encountered over the years, but nobody really knows the difference between any of them. And so we've got the modern image of the Hollywood vampire, with all the standard Hollywood vampire tricks. But it's actually, I could then break those out into 3 different cohorts and then say, okay, now I've got these 3 different competing predators, and we're going to have to figure out an ecology for how they work and how they interact with their prey and how their politics function, and it turns into a whole huge thing. Hopefully, that you can make that happen over and over within the same story, enough to keep the readers going, oh, this is something neat and cool, and yes, it does make sense. I've never really thought of that before, but oh, I should have understood. That's when you've won as a writer, is when the reader goes, oh, I should have seen that coming ages ago. And there's no way they could have. But you've made it seem, contiguous enough that the reader goes, I should have seen this a long time ago. And then it's like, yes, victory.
Yeah, I definitely like sort of customizing and tweaking my traditional creatures if I'm going to use them. I had mentioned writing an urban fantasy set in the New Orleans of the big Katrina hurricane disaster, and it's called the Bad Luck Spirits Social Aid and Pleasure Club. And the idea behind the novel was, as I was, when my family and I were trapped out of town in Albuquerque at a science fiction convention, actually, Katrina, and I found myself watching, CNN hours and hours at a time, and every 5-6 hours, things were just getting worse and worse, and I'd go to sleep, and I'd wake up, and I'd turn on the TV, or I'd run to the internet downstairs at the hotel, and things would have somehow gotten worse. And I remember thinking to myself, this is beyond human capacity to screw it up this badly. There has to be something else going on, something behind the scenes, some secret history of the massive cluster you-know-what that is going on. And so my notion was, well, maybe there's a conspiracy, a supernatural conspiracy of bad luck spirits in New Orleans that's trying to basically wipe out the city, drive all the human inhabitants out. And then I started thinking, well, where would these bad luck spirits have come from? And I started basing them on the different ethnic traditions of the various populations that came in over a 300-year period to settle New Orleans. So I ended up with of course, French and English bad luck spirits, African bad luck spirits, Ashkenazi Jewish bad luck spirits, working my way up to the Vietnamese bad luck spirits, who ended up being actually my favorite characters in the book. Yeah, I did of course, a lot of research into the bad luck spirit traditions or trickster traditions of these various different cultures, but ended up, tweaking just about everything.
Yeah, you get that one little idea, and all of a sudden you've got this story universe spawning. You look back a couple of weeks later, and you've got half a novel worth of notes. They don't actually tell any stories at all, but boy, they're cool. I think that's the curse of a writer. I think that's really that kind of mentality. That's what drives you to become a writer. You've got to get that out of your head.
Following up on what you were saying, Andrew, about the different mythologies that you were bringing into your book, do you all feel that in American urban fantasy today there is a dominant mythology? And looking forward, if there is, do you think it's going to expand to other world mythologies and incorporating those in?
Well, I would say, writers tend to be archaeologists. Archaeologists, sociologists, anthropologists, they're always looking for, digging for fresh material. Of course, if you go back 20, 30, 40 years, I mean, your dominant cultural mythologies would have been, you know, Irish, German, English, etc. But certainly within the last 10, 20 years, there's been a huge amount of branching out, and I think you'll see more and more of that.
This might be a little off topic, but all three of you have written, to one extent or another, romance into your stories. How did your significant others feel when they found out that you'd be writing something, writing a romantic scene? Was it, you know, hey, page 83, that's me? Or is it, oh God, I can never look my significant other's friends in the eye again?
Well, for me, you know, when I would read some of the stuff that Shannon wrote, I'd ask her, why did you tone it down for the book?
You totally walked into that one. No, you change things enough that no one can, you know, can identify what's going on personally. So it's definitely a, this is my writing, this is not my writing. So that's how I do it.
Well, I could say that that little scenario that you just gave there ended up working in my favor. I had just finished the manuscript for Fat White Vampire Blues when I started dating my wife Dara, and you know, after we had been out on a few dates, I asked her, would you like to read this novel that I just wrote? And she said, sure. And what she was thinking in the back of her mind was, please don't let it suck. Please don't let it suck. Because I handed her, you know, a huge box like this thick of paper for her to read. And I had to tell her, you know, there's some kind of unusual stooping in this book. And she says, well, I'll read it and I'll see what I think. And the funny thing was, when we first started dating, she had, as soon as she met me, she pretty much decided, this is the one I'm going to go after. And the first thing she did was she went on a diet, not realizing that was, for me, the worst thing she could have done. So she read Fat White Vampire Blues with all of the crazy stooping and turned to me and said, Andy, I love you, I'm going off my diet.
Do you think that American writers, because we have such a multicultural, there's a representative of almost every modern, quasi-modern world culture in America, do you think it's easier for urban fantasy, etc., novels in America? Because we can write almost anything and say, yes, we have that in America, versus writers in other countries.
I don't know, I've never been a writer in another country.
Well, it's the same thing. Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be true, but I can only imagine.
I mean, I would say, yeah, that would tend to be an advantage. Although you can also run into, I guess, some roadblocks in terms of, I guess, political correctness. Sometimes, and I think this is much less the situation in the world of fantasy and science fiction than it would be in the world of, say, you know, quote unquote literary fiction. That a male Anglo-white writer would be accused of appropriating someone else's cultural heritage, you know, by writing sort of outside their box. I really, you know, that's. I get the impression it's much less of a danger, so to speak, in our area of literature than it is in literary fiction.
Yeah, there's such a great defense for it when you go, you know, this is make-believe, right? I mean, it's not meant to be taken seriously. That's why there's little fairies with wings flying around it.